Alexander Hayes stood before the expansive glass window of his top-floor office in the Lumos Tech skyscraper, gazing out at the glittering lights of Oslo below. The golden glow of the city, scattered across the frigid winter night, resembled countless tiny stars. Yet amidst this grandeur, Alexander felt an emptiness that all the success in the world could not fill. At 42, Alexander Hayes was the epitome of achievement, the CEO of Lumos Tech, one of the world's leading technology firms. Admired for his decisive leadership, bold strategies, and industry-revolutionizing projects, he was a towering figure in his field. But over the past 2 decades, while others celebrated his relentless ascent, Alexander had experienced only the cold, unrelenting solitude of an endless winter. When he was just 22, tragedy struck. His parents lost their lives in a car accident, leaving him to take the reins of the family business. What had once been a young man's fervent passion for technology turned into a grueling journey of survival in the ruthless world of corporate leadership. Friends drifted away, personal relationships eroded under the weight of his self-imposed isolation, and Alexander learned a harsh truth. To protect himself from pain, he needed to maintain a distance from everyone. Years of loneliness left an indelible mark on Alexander's life. He avoided love, friendships, and meaningful connections, opting instead to immerse himself in work. He built a flawless public persona, a cold, unyielding, and distant CEO. Under this guise, he operated covertly, taking on the role of an unassuming middle manager within the company. Few suspected that the unremarkable Alexander Hayes they saw daily was in fact the powerful figure overseeing everything. To Alexander, trust was a luxury, and intimacy carried the ever-present risk of betrayal. That night, after a tense meeting about expansion strategies, Alexander drove home. Snow blanketed the streets, and the dim streetlights made the cold seem even more piercing. He preferred driving alone on nights like these. It was one of the rare times he could momentarily escape the pressure of work, the endless meetings, and the constant expectations. As his car glided down a quiet street, Alexander's attention was drawn to a young woman struggling with a small cart laden with grocery bags. The cart wobbled precariously on the slippery, snow-covered path, and the woman, bundled in a worn coat, desperately tried to steady it against the biting wind. Before he could fully process the scene, the cart tipped over, spilling its contents across the icy ground, and the woman slipped and fell. For reasons he couldn't quite explain, Alexander hit the brakes. He rarely involved himself in the affairs of others, but something about this moment compelled him to act. Exiting his car, he felt the icy air cut through his coat as he approached the fallen woman. "Let me help," Alexander said, his voice calm yet firm. The woman looked up, her expression a mix of wariness and embarrassment. "No, thank you. I can handle it," she replied, her voice trembling from the cold. "Clearly you can't," he countered, crouching to gather the scattered bags. Reluctantly, she conceded. "Thank you," she murmured, avoiding his gaze. As Alexander helped her reload the cart, he noticed her hands reddened and chapped from the freezing weather. "Let me drive you home," he offered, ignoring her weak protests. The journey to her home was short, a modest, aging apartment in a quiet residential area. Alexander observed as she stepped out, cradling one of the bags. Through the window, he caught a fleeting glimpse of a simple room adorned with a few scattered children's toys. "Clara Sorensen," she introduced herself quickly, her hand resting on the door handle. "Thank you again. I don't know how to repay you." "There's no need," Alexander replied, nodding slightly. As he drove away, Clara Sorensen lingered in his thoughts. A single mother trying to carve out a life with so little. Her existence was a stark contrast to his. Simple, challenging, but imbued with an authenticity that resonated with him. That night, for the first time in years, Alexander felt a stirring in his soul, a longing for something his wealth and success could never provide. Welcome to Soul Stories. Today, we bring you a heartwarming tale. Let us know which city you're tuning in from around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to catch more meaningful stories. Chapter 1. Reunited. The morning sunlight filtered through the expansive glass windows of Lumos Tech's headquarters, illuminating every corner of the meticulously designed office space. Alexander Hayes stepped out of the elevator on the 38th floor, where he routinely began his day under the guise of a normal manager. No one among the employees knew that the quiet man in a modest suit was actually the CEO of the entire corporation. That morning, as usual, Alexander walked past the hallway near the main conference room, but this time, his gaze stopped at a familiar figure. Clara Sorensen, the woman he had helped the previous evening, was carefully cleaning the tables and chairs in the meeting room. She wore the dark blue uniform of the cleaning crew, her hair tied neatly back, though her face carried an air of exhaustion. Clara didn't notice Alexander as he passed. She was focused on her work, moving with precision and care. Every wipe of the cloth was deliberate, neither rushed nor haphazard. Alexander paused at the corner of the hallway, observing her quietly. He didn't know why he was drawn to her, but there was something about her patience and dedication that made him linger. When Clara turned and caught Alexander's gaze, she startled briefly before quickly nodding politely. Alexander returned the gesture with a slight nod, then continued on his way. In the days that followed, Clara frequently appeared on the 38th floor, assigned to maintain its cleanliness. Each time Alexander passed her, he made a conscious effort to engage in small talk. "Good morning," he greeted her one day as they crossed paths in the hallway. Clara looked up, slightly surprised at the friendliness of this manager. "Good morning. I hope I'm not disturbing your work." "Not at all," Alexander replied, his tone calm but warm. "You're very thorough in what you do." Clara gave a small smile but didn't say much else. Alexander noticed that she wasn't accustomed to receiving compliments, but neither did she seem overly cautious or distant. Gradually through these brief exchanges, Alexander learned more about Clara. She was a single mother working part-time to support her 3-year-old son, Elias. Her job at Lumos Tech was her primary source of income, and she made every effort to complete her task with perfection. Alexander found himself increasingly drawn to the way Clara navigated her life. Despite her struggles, she never complained or sought sympathy. Instead, she maintained a calm demeanor and carried herself with a quiet dignity that he deeply admired. One afternoon, while Alexander was working in his assumed managerial office, raised voices echoed from the hallway. He left his desk to investigate and saw Clara being berated by Sophie Larson, the administrative department head. "Can't you clean more thoroughly?" Sophie snapped, her tone sharp with irritation. "I just saw dust on the conference table." Clara stood still, her head slightly bowed, but her gaze unflinching. "I cleaned the table thoroughly before you entered. The dust might have settled from the documents you brought in." Clara's calm response only seemed to inflame Sophie further. "Don't argue with me. I'll report this to your supervisor. Your job is to clean, so do it properly." Alexander felt a surge of anger rise within him as he listened to Sophie's unjust tirade. Clara was simply doing her job, and she didn't deserve this treatment. However, Alexander knew that stepping in as a regular manager might complicate matters further. After Sophie stormed off, Alexander approached Clara. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice low with concern. Clara took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I'm fine. I'm used to it. Thank you for asking." Alexander didn't press further, but his resolve to address the situation silently hardened. That evening, using his authority as CEO, he sent a directive to the administrative department emphasizing the importance of respecting all employees, regardless of their roles. He also instructed the cleaning team supervisor to investigate and address Sophie's habitual, unfounded complaints. The next day, Sophie received a formal email from senior management, warning her to adjust her behavior. No one suspected that Alexander was behind it all. Over the following days, Clara noticed the changes. Sophie's reprimands ceased, replaced by an uncomfortable silence. Clara had no idea what had happened, but felt an unspoken sense of protection from somewhere within the company. During another encounter in the hallway, Clara was the one to speak first. "Thank you for checking in the other day. It meant a lot to me." Alexander nodded, maintaining his calm exterior. "It's important to me that everyone here is treated fairly." His response made Clara feel a warmth she hadn't expected. Though she couldn't pinpoint it, she sensed that there was more to this manager than met the eye. From that point on, Clara no longer felt alone at work. Every time she saw Alexander, she felt a quiet reassurance. And for Alexander, these moments of connection with Clara brought him a rare sense of joy, a reminder of the simple human interactions he had been missing amidst the cold walls of the empire he had spent his life building. Chapter 2. Reminiscence and Bonding. Since their first encounter at Lumos Tech, a unique connection had gradually formed between Alexander and Clara. Although their conversations began with simple questions, they quickly grew deeper as both found mutual understanding in each other's stories. One afternoon, after Clara finished her shift on the 38th floor, Alexander happened to run into her near the break area. He offered her a warm cup of coffee, and they sat together in a quiet corner of the room. "You mentioned you liked interior design," Alexander began, his eyes intently watching her. "Why did you stop pursuing it?" Clara gave a faint, bittersweet smile, gently turning the paper cup in her hands. "I studied it at university, but I had to drop out when I found out I was pregnant with Elias. My family didn't support me. They even disowned me. Since that day, Elias has been my whole world. I do everything I can to give him a stable life." Alexander was silent, feeling the pain hidden in Clara's words. "That's a huge sacrifice," he said quietly. "It's not a sacrifice," Clara replied, her eyes lighting up as she spoke about her son. "Elias is the reason I keep going, but sometimes I wonder if I could ever go back and finish that dream, if it's even possible." Alexander felt his heart sink. In Clara's eyes, he saw regret, but he also saw the resilience that helped her endure. He felt a profound sense of kinship. Memories of losing his parents in the car accident and being thrust into the responsibility of managing Lumos Tech at just 22 flooded back. Those were lonely and difficult years, where he had to learn how to run the company while facing skepticism about his abilities. "I know what that feels like," Alexander finally said after a moment of silence. "Loss and responsibility. They can make you feel very alone." Clara looked at him in surprise but didn't press further. Alexander quickly changed the subject, unwilling to reveal too much about himself. After that conversation, Alexander couldn't stop thinking about what Clara had shared. He realized he wanted to help her, but didn't want her to know his true role at the company. He started with small gestures. Through an anonymous charity fund that Lumos Tech had established years ago, Alexander arranged for Elias to receive a scholarship at a high-quality preschool. Clara was initially surprised and hesitant when she received the notification, but upon learning the scholarship came from an unidentified donor, she decided to accept it for Elias's benefit. Another time, Alexander discovered that Clara often spent her evenings watching online tutorials about interior design. Recognizing that her passions still burned brightly, he secretly funded her enrollment in an online course offered by a prestigious academy. "Maybe someone out there truly believes I can do it," Clara told Alexander during one of their conversations. "I still don't know who the donor is, but I'm grateful to them." Alexander only smiled, saying nothing. He felt a quiet joy seeing Clara slowly rediscover hope in her life. One late evening, Alexander encountered Clara in the building's lobby as she finished her shift. The Oslo sky was dark, with light snow falling, covering the city in a pristine white blanket. "Clara, do you have a moment? There's a place I'd like to take you," Alexander asked, his voice gentle. Clara hesitated but eventually agreed. They walked through quiet streets to a small park in the city center. Alexander led her to a bench near a frozen pond, where the light from street lamps reflected on the icy surface, creating shimmering rays. "I come here whenever I need to think," Alexander said, sitting beside Clara. "It reminds me that no matter how busy life gets, we need to pause and reflect." Clara sat in silence, soaking in the peace of the moment. "Thank you, Alexander. I don't think I've felt this calm in a long time," she admitted. "You deserve moments like this, Clara," Alexander replied, his gaze soft. "You've done so much for Elias, but you shouldn't forget to care for yourself too." In that moment, their connection didn't need words. Alexander realized that Clara wasn't just helping him understand the importance of empathy, she was also teaching him the value of genuine relationships. Clara, though she didn't say it, also felt that Alexander was unlike anyone she had ever met. He didn't just listen to her story, he silently created opportunities for her to thrive. Even though she didn't yet know the full truth about him, Clara gradually trusted that Alexander was someone she could rely on. And so, amidst Oslo's cold winter, two lonely souls began to find warmth in each other, bit by bit, through conversations, understanding, and quiet, meaningful actions. Chapter 3. The Truth Revealed. Sophie Anker, Lumos Tech's meticulous and uncompromising HR director, prided herself on safeguarding the company's reputation. Over the past few weeks, she had noticed Alexander Hayes, usually reserved and distant, frequently appearing near Clara Sorensen's workstation, a new member of the cleaning staff. This unusual interest unsettled Sophie, raising suspicions about the nature of their interactions. One morning during a leadership meeting, Sophie raised the issue. "There's something we need to address," Sophie began, her sharp gaze fixed on Alexander. "Certain employees have reported unusual favoritism you've shown toward a junior staff member." Alexander remained calm, his expression unreadable. "You're speculating, Sophie. I observe all employees, not just Clara." Sophie wasn't convinced. "But it appears she's receiving more attention than others. To ensure transparency and fairness, I propose a thorough background check on Clara." Though he maintained his composure, Alexander felt a surge of anger. He knew Sophie's doubts were unfounded, but he couldn't defend Clara without risking exposure of his true identity. The following morning, Clara was summoned to HR. She was puzzled but immediately sensed a heavy atmosphere upon entering the room. Sophie sat at the head of the table, a folder of documents spread before her. "Ms. Sorensen," Sophie began coldly, "we've uncovered some discrepancies in your background. According to your records, you dropped out of university and had a child out of wedlock. Such personal circumstances could reflect poorly on the company's image." Clara paled but kept her composure. "My personal life has nothing to do with my work here. I've always fulfilled my duties to the best of my abilities." "We're not saying your work is unsatisfactory," Sophie replied, a smug smile playing on her lips. "But I need to understand why you seem to have a special relationship with Mr. Hayes." The insinuation felt like a slap in the face. Clara was stunned that her casual conversations with Alexander were being twisted into something inappropriate. Before she could respond, the door opened and Alexander entered the room. "What's going on here?" Alexander's voice was low and sharp, cutting through the tension. Sophie stood, attempting to maintain her composure. "Alexander, I'm merely addressing some concerns about this employee. It seems she might be taking advantage of your generosity." "My generosity?" Alexander raised an eyebrow. "Do you think I'm unaware of what I'm doing?" Sophie's confidence faltered under his intense gaze, but she pressed on. "We have to protect the company's reputation. If there's any inappropriate behavior between the two of you, it could damage Lumos Tech's standing." Alexander stepped closer, his eyes fixed on Sophie. "If you're so concerned about the company, then I'll clarify everything here and now." Taking a deep breath, he turned to Clara. "I owe you an apology, Clara. I haven't been honest with you. I'm not a mid-level manager. I'm the CEO of Lumos Tech." The room fell silent. Clara felt as though the world had tilted beneath her feet. She stared at Alexander, her face a mix of shock and betrayal. "You're the CEO?" she whispered. "You've been hiding this from me all along?" Alexander nodded, his voice soft yet steady. "I didn't mean to deceive you. I've kept my identity hidden to better understand the company from the employee's perspective. Then I met you. You changed how I see the world, Clara. I wanted to help you, but I was afraid that if you knew who I really was, you wouldn't see me as just another person." Clara stepped back, tears welling in her eyes. "You think I needed your help?" "I don't need your pity or your generosity, Alexander. I've faced my struggles alone, and I will continue to do so." "Clara, please don't leave," Alexander said, his voice raw with emotion. "I never thought you needed pity. I only wanted to give you and Elias a chance for a better life." Clara shook her head, her tears spilling over. "You didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. I can't stay here, not when people are watching me with suspicion." Alexander stood frozen, watching as Clara left the room. His heart ached, but he knew he couldn't force her to stay. That evening, Clara packed her belongings and decided to leave Oslo with Elias. She knew she couldn't continue living under scrutiny, and her priority was protecting her son from judgmental eyes. As the city lights faded in the distance, Clara couldn't stop thinking about Alexander. Despite her pain, she believed she had made the right decision. Meanwhile, Alexander stood by the window of his penthouse, gazing at the glittering skyline of Oslo. A hollow emptiness filled his chest. Clara was gone, and he didn't know how to make things right. "Clara, will you ever forgive me?" he whispered, his voice laden with despair. Deep down, Alexander knew he couldn't give up. He had to find a way to prove to Clara that he wasn't just a CEO, but someone willing to change for her and Elias. Are you still following the story? If yes, comment, pizza. Ha ha. Chapter 4. The Final Test. After Clara left, Alexander felt empty, unable to focus on work. He knew he had been wrong to hide his identity, but losing Clara and Elias made him realize he couldn't give up. Determined to make amends, he decided to come clean, both to his company and to the public. At a company-wide meeting, Alexander stood on stage, his gaze steady. Facing hundreds of employees, he admitted to concealing his identity. He explained that he had done so not only to better understand the company, but also to witness the genuine efforts of his team without the shadow of his title. And during this journey, he said, his voice heavy with emotion, I met an extraordinary woman. She's not just a hard-working employee, but a resilient mother. Clara Sorensen reminded me that this company isn't just about profits, it's about people. I deeply regret not protecting her sooner. Alexander didn't stop at an apology. He made a decisive move. He terminated Sophie Anker for abusing her power and unjustly targeting Clara. He also announced the creation of the Light Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting single mothers like Clara, providing them with opportunities to learn and build better futures for their children. I've learned that sometimes it's not about avoiding mistakes, but about taking responsibility and making things right, Alexander concluded. In a small town not far from Oslo, Clara started a new life. She looked for work in local shops, but caring for Elias made full-time employment nearly impossible. Her savings dwindled, and she struggled to make ends meet. Each night, as Elias slept peacefully in her arms, she wondered if she had been wrong to refuse Alexander's help. Yet the sting of betrayal kept her from forgiving him. One day, Clara received a package. Inside was a folder introducing the Light Foundation and a handwritten letter from Alexander. Clara, I don't expect your forgiveness. I only want you to know that your story inspired me. I established this foundation not to atone for my mistakes, but because I believe people like you deserve better opportunities. If you ever need help, Elias will always be my priority. Alexander. Clara's heart felt heavy. Though she resisted accepting help, she couldn't deny that Alexander was making a sincere effort to right his wrongs. One morning, Clara noticed Elias running a high fever. Initially, she thought it was a minor cold, but his condition worsened rapidly. Panicked, she rushed him to the hospital. Doctors diagnosed Elias with severe pneumonia and said he required immediate treatment. Clara sat by his bedside, clutching his tiny hand as he labored to breathe through the tubes. She felt helpless and desperate. Amid the chaos, Alexander appeared unexpectedly. His face was etched with worry as he entered the room, accompanied by a leading specialist he had brought in. Alexander? Clara gasped, unable to hide her surprise. How did you know? Miss Martinez called me, Alexander replied, his voice calm yet gentle. I couldn't stand by while Elias needed help. Clara was speechless, watching as Alexander spoke with the doctors, ensuring Elias received the best care. Throughout the night, Alexander stayed at the hospital. He sat in the waiting area, his eyes constantly fixed on the room where Elias lay. As Elias began to recover, Clara couldn't ignore Alexander's unwavering dedication. Every time he softly asked about Elias or brought small items to comfort the boy, she felt the sincerity behind his actions. One evening, after Elias had fallen asleep, Clara stepped into the hallway where Alexander sat. Why are you doing all this? She asked, her voice a mix of skepticism and emotion. Alexander looked up, his eyes filled with regret and determination. Because I love you and Elias, Clara. I know I made mistakes, but I can't give up. I just want to make sure you both are safe. Clara felt a wave of indescribable emotion. While Alexander had erred, his actions consistently proved his genuine care for her and Elias. His sincerity, though imperfect, began to change how she saw him. When Elias was discharged from the hospital, Clara decided not to push Alexander away any longer. Despite the lingering hurt, she understood that love and kindness didn't need to be flawless to be meaningful. Clara agreed to give things another chance. not just for Alexander, but for Elias, who deserved a complete and loving family. On the ride home, as Alexander helped Clara secure Elias in the car, she looked at him and said, "I'm not ready to forgive you completely, but I'm willing to try again. For Elias." Alexander smiled, hope shining in his eyes. "Thank you, Clara. I promise I won't let you down." Beneath Oslo's starlit sky, they began to rewrite their story. No more secrets, no more walls between them, only sincerity and hope for a brighter future. Chapter 5. A Happy Ending. After Elias fully recovered, Clara decided to pursue her dream of becoming an interior designer once more. She stood at the doors of Lumos Tech again, but this time not as a cleaning staff member, but as the interior designer she had always dreamed of being. Alexander had personally arranged the position for her, though he ensured there was no pressure and left the decision entirely up to her. On her first day back, Clara noticed the change. Her colleagues greeted her warmly, and there were no longer prying eyes or whispers. Her office was near the creative department, featuring large windows overlooking the Oslo skyline. Clara began her work by planning the redesign of the company's workspace, aiming to create a more comfortable and inspiring environment for the employees. Although Alexander maintained a professional distance, he couldn't hide his pride as he watched Clara at work. He would often pause outside her office, observing her focus on her drawings, a slight smile on her lips whenever a new idea struck her. "She's truly an artist," he thought quietly. Alexander understood that Clara still needed time to heal from the emotional wounds of the past. He didn't rush her into a relationship, but chose instead to support her from afar. During his business trips, he would bring back small gifts for Elias, children's books, building toys, always thoughtfully chosen based on the boy's interests. Clara, too, began to notice Alexander's patience and sincerity in every action. Gradually, they shared more meaningful moments, weekend afternoons at the park with Elias, times when Alexander helped Clara pick colors and ideas for her design projects. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace in Clara's home, with Elias soundly asleep on the couch, Clara suddenly spoke. "You've changed a lot, Alexander," she said. "I just want to prove that I can do things right. This time for you and Elias," he replied, his eyes filled with genuine honesty. Clara smiled softly. "Maybe I need to learn to trust again, too." A few months later, the Light Foundation officially launched. The event took place in Lumos Tech's Grand Hall, attended by employees, partners, and supporters. Clara, in her role as the foundation's design consultant, stood on stage to present its first projects: centers supporting single mothers, scholarships for children, and vocational training programs. From the audience, Alexander watched Clara with admiration. He saw a woman who had not only overcome her struggles, but was also inspiring others to do the same. When the ceremony ended, Alexander stepped onto the stage. With all eyes on him, he took the microphone. "Clara," he began, his voice brimming with emotion, "you've taught me that love isn't just a feeling. It's action, the effort to become a better person. I know I'm not perfect, but I promise to do everything I can to bring happiness to you and Elias." Then Alexander knelt down, pulling out a small box that held a simple yet elegant ring. "Clara Sørensen, will you marry me?" The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Clara. Elias, standing beside his mother, tugged at her hand and whispered, "Mama, I like Mr. Alexander." Clara smiled through her tears, looking at Alexander, and nodded gently. "Yes, I will." The hall erupted into applause. Alexander embraced Clara and Elias, feeling true happiness for the first time. After their wedding, Alexander decided to move to a small house in the Oslo suburbs, a peaceful retreat perfect for raising Elias. The house had a large garden where Elias could play and Clara could grow flowers. Alexander scaled back his workload, dedicating more time to his family. Together, he and Clara cared for Elias, taking him to school, attending parent-teacher meetings, and participating in school events. Clara continued to grow her interior design career, supported by Alexander every step of the way. In the evenings, as the sunset bathed their home in golden light, the family would gather around the dinner table, sharing stories from their day. In those moments, Alexander realized that true success wasn't measured by bank accounts or accolades, but by the simple joy of being with the people he loved. The lives of Alexander, Clara, and Elias became a testament to the power of trust, forgiveness, and genuine love. They overcame pain, misunderstandings, and challenges to build a happy family together. Under Oslo's radiant glow, their story concluded not with perfection, but with authenticity and simplicity. A reminder that sometimes the most important things in life aren't what we achieve, but the values we create with the ones we love. Thank you for following this story. Please rate it from 1 to 5 stars, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our Soul Stories channel. Your support is the motivation for us to continue bringing more great stories